What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? I lost my virginity to my first girlfriend. I was about 16 at the time and was invited over to stay the night because her dad was on a business trip. I was excited because we have talked a bunch about having sex and I was ready to finally lose my virginity. I get to her house and we are straight to action. She pulls down my pants and my DCK is as limp as top ramen noodle. She sucked me off for about 30 minutes until I could get at least half a chub. I put it in missionary and started humping. I didn't really know what to do with my hands and at the time I knew that people pull hair during sex. So I stare at her missionary position and take 2 handfuls of her hair on both sides and just pull in a downward thrust while I'm humping. I sometimes think of this moment and want to disappear lol. Ugh, I almost completely erased this memory. So I was young and I had my first boyfriend. We were experimenting sexually and I really wanted him to think my PSSY tasted nice. So I would literally rub strawberry ducking flavored lip gloss in my vagina. There's no way he didn't know. I thought it was such genius idea that I had to share it with my fellow women. So I wrote it down and passed a note in class to one of my friends. It dropped on the floor and all the boys read it and screamed laughing. Strawberry Lips was my new name and I cried for a week. This was with a girl I dated in high school. My dad was getting drunk at a block party so I got the idea to take his ski boat and go for a romantic boat ride. So we park in the middle of the lake, start making out and stuff. We notice our feet getting wet. The boat was sinking so I start freaking out, bailing water out with cups, sopping it up with my shirt and wringing it out of the boat, just ducking, panicking. Right after I accept the fate of my dad's $12,000 inboard motor ski boat and calm down, I remember that I didn't put back the drain plug before dropping it in the water so I replaced it, drove back. TLDR. Started dating 3 months before sophomore year ended. Once summer started I completely ghosted her. Skipped to first week of junior year. I thought we were still together. You can imagine how she reacted when I approached her for a kiss. The shame is still real to this day. Told my first real GF that I'm glad she wasn't the most beautiful girl in the world so I didn't have to worry about every guy trying to steal her. Speech 100. The letters I've wrote. Oh, those letters. 15-year-old me thought he was deep and romantic. He wasn't. In the 4th grade, one wrote anonymous love letters to a boy I liked and left them in his desk. I saw that he threw them away. So I started writing my name on them. He still threw them in the trash. She started to ignore me at school. This was like maybe 1 or 2 weeks after we started dating. I called her house like 6 or 7 times one afternoon after school until her mum picked up, who was basically furious because I had been calling. I explained to her that Alexa was ignoring my calls. I hear in the background, "Alexa, why aren't you answering the phone?" To which she responds, "Because he's weird and he just keeps calling." I hung up the phone and went to my room. I carved her name in my wall with a pen. I still cringe about it to this day. Was walking her home anticipating kissing her for the first time at her doorstep and kept licking my lips because I didn't want to kiss her with a dry mouth. Halfway to her house she looks at me and says, "Stop doing that." I realized I probably looked really creepy. Broke up with her because my best friend told me to. We were perfectly fine together but I guess I kinda worshipped the guy and his advice. He later tried asking her out when we split. We were all 14-15. Ugh. I had honestly forgotten this until I read this question. First date to a movie. We see Titanic. Because that can only end well. We, as horny youngsters, aren't watching the movie, but instead making out and moaning in probably the 3rd row of a packed theater. I'd never made out before. I assumed moaning was involved. Ugh, so cringy and gross. Declined staying the night because I was, and I quote, wearing a skirt and didn't want it to ride up while I was sleeping. I licked her face to be random. God, that hurt to reimagine. Please don't mention hybridized eating utensils. Slowly rises spork. He took me to Olive Garden and bought me that meat lovers lasagna. I'm pretty damn sure that's what it was is called. And when we got back to his place I wanted to show him how appreciative I was, so I gave him my first blowjob. Turned out I was not ready for that job and threw up the entire lasagna on his penis. God help me, I can't believe I'm finally sharing this story. After I saw Eric propose to Donna on that 70s show, I went out and got a 25-cent ring from the local Pizza Hut and proposed. At school. In front of everyone. I was 16. Edit. I'm glad you all could share a cringe with me. To answer the burning question. She did say yes. We didn't last. Sorry. No happy ending here. Just teenagers doing impulsive things. Tried to defend her honor. I got the shit kicked out of me by 3 guys. I earned cred for taking a beating. But she thought we should just be friends after witnessing that. We took a break and I posted a video to Creep by Radiohead with the caption for that special someone. I almost cringed off my chair writing this. I was 17. We had just had a fight. I drove to his house and blasted Scars by Papa Roach from my car and just stood awkwardly at the end of the driveway waiting for him to come out. I really wish this weren't true. Edit. I let him finger me at school with no idea the people at the next table could see. Told her I loved her within the first 24 hours at the school parking lot. Classic schmosby. I hit my girlfriend with my car. It was a complete accident. We are still friends and it is a story that still comes up in conversation every now and then. Please start using the line "yeah, I hit that." After the first date of going to the movies, I never put my arm around her because I was too scared. We sat in my driveway, and she didn't say goodnight because she was waiting for me to kiss her. I did nothing. So she finally kissed me. In defense mode, I lick my lips all the way around with my tongue like Scooby-Doo does with the cotton candy in the theme song intro. I even did the Rhea he. Kill me. Edit. Cleaned up grammar so that y'all would not be able to deduce that we were brother-sister. JK. Yes, this really happened. I was a freshman in high school and she was a junior. I was not ready for this. Kind of creepy on her part. Looking back. Thanks for the kind words I woke up to. I'm glad y'all like my story. My first makeout session with someone was with my first girlfriend. We were in her bedroom. Turned out the lights and went at it on the floor of her room. After a while I feel something wet on my face. I didn't want to stop so I just ignored it and carried on. She notices it too and decides to turn on the light because something is really wet on our faces. Light comes on and turns out I'd had a massive nosebleed and there was blood everywhere. I was covered in it. She was covered in it and there were blood stains all over her room. If that wasn't embarrassing enough, when she went to the bathroom to clean up, her mum caught her in the hallway. She sees the blood and immediately screams. Her assumption was that I was beating her daughter up and I get chucked out the house. Took a long time and explaining for me to show my face there again. Also lost my virginity to the same girl to cool and the gang celebrate. That was cringy as hell too. I used to take laps around the playground and slap stickers on her ass. I don't know what I was thinking. Sounds like some weird ass anime shit. I got us matching dog tags with our anniversary on it after dating for around 6 months and would secretly get very sad when he wouldn't wear his. I was super shy back in the day and I really liked this guy who had weirdly flirted with me in one of our classes. He told me I looked like some random celebrity when I wore my hair down and how hot she was. So I never wore my hair up again for the entirety of school. I replied later by slipping a note in his locker but didn't sign it. A few days after that, I threw in a t-shirt I thought he would like. He didn't know who it was from until weeks later when he finally wore it to school to see if anyone said something. My BFF at the time did and he realized it was me. Super creepy on my end. We ended up dating for a day before we broke up because we were stupid kids. Now, 15 years later, We reconnected and are now married. So totally worked as planned. A girl that I was about to start dating mentioned she really wanted to go to New Zealand at some point in her life. To a group of people. Not even just to me. So I immediately priced plane tickets and lodgings to New Zealand for a honeymoon. Then, unbelievably, before we had actually started dating, I told her I had priced our honeymoon. My defense was that if things did work out, New Zealand was so expensive I'd have to start saving then. We still dated, but only for about 2 months, and neither of us have been to New Zealand. Let my mum purchase custom matching airbrushed shirts of 2 people kissing, with my girlfriend and my name on them. I'd report my mum for child abuse if she suggested that. I met the love of my life at age 17, aka I started getting my brains ducked out for the first time. She was not shy talking about her prior boyfriend who had a super huge cock that she claimed was very painful. Of course there were other details about their relationship that she shared, too. And she was complicated and we had a lot of fights which I couldn't get my head around. At some point I decided it would be a good idea for him and me to talk and compare notes. So I wrote him a letter proposing this. Mutual friends reported that he was utterly flabbergasted by this. But he approached me and said, "What would you like to talk about?" I think I babbled for 20 minutes after that, but I have no further recollection. Looking back, WTF was I thinking? I was so nervous on the way home. Being 14, his dad drove us to my house to drop me off. I leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. A quick peck and then I threw up his mom's fajitas all over myself. We finally had sex when at a party at my friend's house whose parents were home. The mother knocked on the door and said, "What is going on?" We did not stop. I was too immature to talk about us one day having sex. So I'd giggle and say, "Do you know the Muffin Man? This is too relatable." I was with my first boyfriend sophomore year of college. Things were getting hot and heavy and I kept trying to ask him if he wanted to have sex, but I would just say, "Do you want to?" and then giggle a bunch. To make it worse, after he said no because he didn't have a condom, I coughed and farted really loudly at the same time. Had my first relationship at age 17. We were each other's first for everything. Basically only ever gave him handjobs cause he wasn't very hygienic. He insisted on keeping his underwear on, so I'd have to rub him over his boxers. He'd come inside his boxers and then leave them on for the rest of the day. The odd time he didn't have boxers on, he'd grab a sock and come inside of it and throw it in the laundry pile. His mum did all the laundry. So disgusting every time I think about it. Leave them on for the rest of the day. Semicolon. He French kissed me after eating a bacon double cheeseburger with onions and all sorts of other stinky stuff. I told him I had a bad experience with French kissing with a guy before him. Lies. He was my first kiss of V, and I would appreciate if he never did it again. Bonus cringe. Bonus cringe. I rubbed vapor rub near my eyes to make myself cry when I broke up with him and told him I was overwhelmed and needed to focus on school. I was in 8th grade. A+ for production value though. Was walking her home in our neighborhood. She says her parents aren't home. I say cool. You have the whole house to yourself. And walked back home, wondering if I'd ever get a chance to touch her boobs. Edit. Wow, this got a lot more attention than I thought it would. To answer the big question, yes, I did. Eventually. Then we did more and were pretty bad at it. Then she faked a stalker in order to try to drive a wedge between me and my best friend. So I stopped seeing her. Up and down experiences all around. But hey, I got to do stuff to her for a while. Once I caught on. Haha. We had been texting back and forth, so I knew going to his house I would lose my virginity. Dude opens the door wearing a full suit for the occasion and escorts me holding my hand into his bedroom. Jesus Christ. Edit. Thanks for the fun comments. I have been very entertained reading them. To give some context, it wasn't his first time. We had been dating for around 2 months. I was determined and did go through with the deed. And what happened after was way worse than the suit. Dude had apparently told the entire neighborhood he was getting laid. And 3-4 of his friends broke into the house through the terrace in the middle of the deed. I promise I'm not making this up. After the whole episode was over, he left to the friend's party without inviting me. So, he wasn't really a gentleman after all, as the suit had suggested. A couple days later we broke up. At the time I felt horrible, but now it makes for the juiciest story. First real girlfriend in high school. We used to talk over the voice calls on MSN Messenger late at night. She wanted to just hear my voice, and I very quickly ran out of things to say. So she said I should just read whatever book I had around. She spent the next 30 minutes listening to my Your New Gateway Computer and How to Use It booklet. Broke it off because I thought I was a stud. I was single about 3 years after that. Hell buddy, I broke up with a girl because I heard through the GR that another, in my opinion, prettier girl like me. I went and asked her out, and she laughed in my face. Then I went back to my previous girl and re-asked her out. She also laughed in my face. Walk of shame through the halls, man. My roommate finally got her first boyfriend just before her 40th birthday. She sent him flowers at work on her birthday. He cancelled his date with her that night, and I had to stay up all night with her crying on her birthday. I remember the first time we held hands. She played football on her school team, so I made some comment about how even though I have bigger hands, I still find holding the ball kind of awkward, and asked her to show me how she held it. It was an elaborate ruse to make her hold her hand up, so I could compare hand size and not so smoothly lace fingers as we put our hands back down. It was kind of cute, minus the fact that I was sweating so much that she took her hand back 5 seconds later to wipe my sweat onto her pants. She was a good sport and held my hand again though. That's adorable and not cringy at all to me. I got my best friend to break up with him for me. I'm so ashamed. I broke up with him on the phone while my best friend was on the another phone giggling and writing cue cards of what I should say. The real reason I broke up with him? He forgot to flush his poop at my house. I wasn't going to share this, but let's commiserate. Gave away my favorite blanket from childhood. Literally the dumbest cringiest thing I have ever done. I miss that blanket. My phone at the time was about to run out of storage. This was 2008, and I had to delete all the saved texts I had from him that included some really cheesy sweet ones, and some dirty ones. So I wrote them each down one by one on little pieces of notebook paper, laminated them, and hid them inside a Jonas Brothers book, so I would always have them. Apparently I must have forgotten to get rid of them when I moved out, because my 20-year-old sister found them last week. She called me in tears laughing, and I told her, please, if you love me at all, just throw them away and forget you saw anything. I accidentally sent me EX's dad a DCK pic. Did he send one back? I wrote the girl a poem. It included the phrase, slightly too large nose, and also used the word Kmart. Edit. Since there's been a little response to this, I tried to think back on how the poem went. It was something like this. With your slightly too large nose and your great big heart, a love like this can't be found at Kmart. Never talked when we actually saw each other, but texted constantly when we weren't in the same room. This thread has made me aware people were doing a lot more serious ducking in HS than I was. I always suspected as much. We planned, to the minute, when our first kiss would be. Not too bad, right? We were both nervous, and it was both of our first relationships. I made a website with a countdown clock. We leaned for a smooch and my mouth swallowed half of his face. Did he get it back? My first boyfriend was really into Pink Floyd. When we were making out for the first time, I whispered "wish you were here" into his ear. Tried to have sex. She ended up being a lesbian. Glad I could help her find her way. My first girlfriend had really big tits and I remember sucking and lightly biting her nipples for a long time and she finally said, "You know, I'd rather kiss you." I overstayed my welcome at the memory party. Asked her why she was dating me. Zero confidence will do that to a boy. She had bad breath so I chewed gum and then tried to put it in her mouth with my tongue while kissing. Not exactly a relationship, but this boy I liked in 7th grade passed me a note that asked, "Do you have a BF?" I had been homeschooled before that and didn't know that BF stood for boyfriend, not best friend. And I enthusiastically wrote back, "No, I don't have a best friend." He read the note, slowly looked at me, and then never really talked to me again. It makes me cringe to this day and my boyfriend makes fun of me for it, haha. We met playing WoW. She was level 60 and volunteered to run my character through Scarlet Monastery while I was leveling. Her entire family referred to me as White Rabbit when I was not around, because that was my WoWchar name. First boyfriend. We were 17/18 and I asked him what he wanted for our anniversary. He said I don't know, something random. So I went to Build-A-Bear and bought him a pink sparkly bear named Random and gave it to him. I even bought her more outfits like a Christmas one and a spring one. While it is cringe-worthy to me now 11 years later, our 6-year-old daughter plays with it, so things worked out in the end. Was doing foreplay with my GF, now wife, and said, "Are you ready for King Titan?" King Titan was the name I made up on the spot for my penis. Was giving him my first blowjob and at the same time trying to figure out what I was going to do when he finished. He, on the other hand, unexpectedly finished in my mouth. No warning or nothing. I didn't like it so I spit it out onto his chest. That sounds 100% fair. This was back in like 4th grade. It was Valentine's Day and she had already given me her gift. A cute little heart pillow thingy she made herself. I was going to give her the old classic. Chocolate in a heart-shaped container. My mum had bought it for me to give her. I struggled to find a good time to give it to her, because recently my teacher had doubled down on eating candy in class and was going to confiscate any they could find. Time was running out. The day was almost over. What did I do? I ended up never giving it to her. The fear of getting yelled at by a teacher was overwhelming me. I let that chocolate stay in my bag for a couple of days before confronting my mother about it, asking if I could eat it since it would spoil otherwise. She gave me the most disappointed yes in my whole life. I ate that chocolate. I still feel terrible about it. We broke up not long after. I was an awful boyfriend. Granted I was 9 years old, but still.